Get the hell off my aircraft, now! The words weren't just spoken. They were hurled down the narrow aisle of the first-class cabin like a spear. Security. We need security at Gate 72. We have a hostile impersonator refusing to deplane. Have you ever had a moment where the world just stops? A moment where everything you are, everything you've worked for, is called into question by someone who wouldn't know the first thing about your life. If you have, I want you to hit that subscribe button right now because you're in the right place, and drop a comment below telling me about it, because this community is for us. We're going to get into this unbelievable story, a story about prejudice, so blatant, so utterly insane that it had to be seen to be believed. And thanks to one kid with a smartphone, it was. Captain Anya Sharma stood frozen, one hand resting on the polished frame of the cockpit door, the 4 gold stripes on her epaulets, each one representing years of discipline, sacrifice, and countless hours in the sky, seemed to glint under the cabin's soft lighting, mocking her. She had been about to step onto the flight deck of the Airbus A380 she was scheduled to command on its 6-hour journey from Los Angeles to New York. She turned slowly, her face a mask of controlled disbelief. "I beg your pardon?" Her voice was steady, a low, calm instrument honed by years of managing in-flight emergencies, a stark contrast to the venom that had just been spat at her. The flight attendant, a woman whose name tag read Heather, planted her hands on the beverage cart, creating a physical barricade. Heather Vance was in her late 20s, with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, which were now narrowed into slits of righteous authority. "You heard me!" she snapped, her voice pitching louder, deliberately playing to the gallery of passengers settling into their plush leather seats. "This isn't a costume party, sweetheart. The real pilot is already on board. So I suggest you take your little fantasy flight back to whatever convention you came from and exit the aircraft immediately." A ripple of motion went through the cabin. Phones, at first hidden in pockets and designer bags, began to emerge like shy animals. A college kid in seat 3A, a vlogger named Leo Martinez, had his screen angled perfectly, the little red live icon already glowing in the top corner. His eyes were wide, telegraphing a delicious, unfolding drama to his small but growing audience. This was gold. Anya glanced down at her immaculate uniform, the crisp white shirt, the tailored black trousers, the captain's jacket bearing the Ascend Air logo. Then she looked back at Heather. Have you ever been so fundamentally misjudged that reality itself feels like it's warping around you? The very air in the cabin felt thick, charged with a humiliating tension that was solely directed at her. Anya felt the familiar hot sting of it, an old ghost she had fought in boardrooms, in flight schools, and on tarmacs her entire life. Heather's knuckles were white where she gripped the cart. She wasn't just doing her job, she was reveling in it. This was her domain, and Anya was an intruder. "Listen, miss." Heather's voice dripped with a condescending sweetness that was somehow more insulting than her initial outburst. "I don't know who you're trying to fool, but I've been with this airline for 5 years. Real pilots don't look like you." The words hung in the air, naked and ugly. "Don't look like you." It wasn't just about the uniform anymore. It was about her face, her skin, her gender. Leo adjusted his phone, zooming in slightly. His Instagram live notification showed 50 viewers, and the number was ticking upward fast. The comment section began to scroll. "Y'all seeing this?" he whispered into his phone's microphone. "Flight attendant is straight up power tripping on a pilot. This is wild." Anya calmly reached into the inner pocket of her jacket, her movements precise and unhurried. She withdrew the leather wallet containing her credentials. "My name is Captain Anya Sharma," she stated, her voice resonating with an authority that Heather seemed immune to. "This is Ascend Air, Flight 815, with non-stop service to JFK. I am the pilot in command of this aircraft. She held out her airline transport pilot license and her Ascend Air corporate ID, both featuring her photograph and the requisite federal markings. Heather barely gave them a glance. Wow, a damn good fake. The props department must love you. Did you get that online, too? She turned her venomous smile on the passengers. Don't you worry, folks. Your safety is our #1 priority. We'll have this situation handled in just a moment and be on our way. A man in seat 1C, a corporate lawyer in a Tom Ford suit, lowered his Wall Street Journal. Excuse me, he said, his voice laced with annoyance, but her uniform is authentic, her credentials look legitimate, and she carries herself with more professionalism than you've demonstrated this entire time. Perhaps you should call the gate agent and verify before you continue to delay this flight. Sir, with all due respect, I'm trained to spot irregularities, Heather shot back, cutting him off with a wave of her hand. Please allow me to handle airline security. Some people will do anything for attention these days. Suddenly, the cabin's PA system crackled to life. A smooth male voice filled the aircraft. Good morning, folks. This is your first officer, Marcus Thorne, speaking from the flight deck. Just want to let you know we're experiencing a brief, unexpected delay with our pre-flight procedures. Shouldn't be too much longer. We appreciate your patience and will have you in the air shortly. Anya's jaw tightened. Marcus. A good man. A fine pilot. They'd flown together for the better part of a year. He was sitting 30 feet away, probably wondering where on earth she was. 25 years of flying, a degree in aerospace engineering from MIT, top of her class in the Air Force. She'd bought her first commercial pilot license at an age when most people were still figuring out their majors in college. And here she stood, a trespasser on her own flight deck, being publicly humiliated by an employee whose salary she signed off on. She read the name tag again. Heather. Heather, Anya said, her voice dropping to a steely quiet. I am going to ask you one more time. Step aside and allow me to access the cockpit. And I am going to ask you one more time to exit this plane before I have you physically removed, Heather countered, her arms crossing over her chest in a gesture of ultimate finality. You are now officially delaying a federal flight. Leo's viewer count hit 150. The comments were a blur of outrage and disbelief. This is insane. Ascend Air fail. Someone needs to get a manager ASAP. That pilot is a class act. The flight attendant is a nightmare. An elderly man in 2D, wearing a veteran's pin on his lapel, spoke up, his voice raspy but firm. Young lady, I spent 30 years in the Air Force. That woman is a captain. I can see it in the way she stands. You are making a fool of yourself. Heather spun around, her face flushed with anger. Sir, I'm just doing my job. It's a security risk. We can't have random people dressing up and walking onto planes. Random people? The veteran shot back. She's the most qualified person on this damn plane. Anya watched as the small rebellion grew. The passengers were no longer just passive observers. They were taking sides. But this wasn't just about her. It was a scene playing out in 1,000 different ways across the country every single day. The small, casual dismissals. The quiet assumptions. The doors that closed because you didn't have the right look. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text message. It was from David Chen, Ascend Air's chief financial officer. Board meeting pushed to 4 p.m. EST. The new draft of the Inclusivity and Diversity Protocol is ready for your review. The irony was so thick it was almost comical. In just a few hours, she was scheduled to present a revolutionary anti-bias training protocol to her own board of directors. And at this very moment, she was living out the most extreme textbook example of why it was so desperately needed. Heather noticed Anya glance at her phone. What now? Texting your friends to come rescue you? Planning to post on social media about how you were so unfairly treated? The sarcasm in her voice could curdle milk. Maybe next time, try dressing for the job you actually have. Anya looked up from her phone, her eyes meeting Heather's. And what job would that be? She asked, her voice dangerously quiet. Heather's razor-thin smile returned. I don't know. Maybe something in customer service? Or, she let her eyes trail over Anya's form in a dismissive once-over. Perhaps housekeeping. A dead silence fell over the first-class cabin. Even the hum of the auxiliary power unit seemed to fade. The businessman in 1C folded his newspaper completely, setting it aside as he stared at Heather with undisguised disgust. Leo's livestream exploded. The viewer count shot past 400. The comment section became an avalanche of pure fury. She did not just say that. OMG, that is racist and sexist AF. Someone screen record this right now. This woman needs to be fired yesterday. That's when the gate supervisor, Richard Fleming, appeared at the open aircraft door, his face a mask of harried importance. He was followed by 2 airport security officers, their posture casual, but their eyes scanning, assessing. What in God's name is the holdup here? Richard demanded, his voice echoing the frustration of a man whose on-time departure metrics were everything. Heather seized her moment, straightening up like a star witness. Richard, thank God. We have an unauthorized individual in a pilot costume who is impersonating airline crew. She's been verbally abusive, is refusing to exit the aircraft, and is delaying our departure. Richard's eyes fell on Anya. He saw her uniform, her briefcase, her unwavering professional stance. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, a brief moment of cognitive dissonance. But he saw Heather, his subordinate, his employee, in a state of manufactured panic. He made his choice. Ma'am, he said, his voice clipped and authoritative. I'm going to have to ask you to come with us, now. Leo's live feed rocketed past 600 viewers. This is it, guys, he whispered. They're trying to kick her off. Share this live. Get it out there. The comment section was a frantic waterfall of hashtags. Ascend Air. Flying while brown. Corporate racism. This is utterly preposterous, the lawyer in 1C boomed, standing up. This woman is clearly a pilot. Check her damn credentials before you make a massive mistake. Sir, please remain in your seat, one of the security officers said, stepping forward. We're handling it. But the resistance was spreading. The veteran from 2D was on his feet now, as was a woman from 3B who had been filming on TikTok. They weren't just passengers anymore. They were witnesses forming a human barricade in the aisle. This is discrimination, and you know it, the veteran declared, pointing a trembling finger at Heather. Just as the security officers began to move toward Anya, a second, more formidable presence filled the aircraft doorway. Karen Baxter, the station manager, a woman who looked like she chewed nails for breakfast, and whose corporate ascent was legendary. What the hell is going on here? She barked, her eyes sweeping the scene with zero tolerance for chaos. We have a schedule to keep. Richard quickly gave her Heather's version of the story, painting Anya as a deranged wannabe pilot, causing a major security disturbance. Karen's eyes narrowed as they fixated on Anya, her gaze a slow, deliberate appraisal from head to toe, lingering for a moment on her brown skin and her woman's form. Even if you are some kind of pilot, Karen said, her tone dripping with a level of condescension that made Heather's seem amateurish. You're clearly not our pilot. Ascend Air has standards. The words struck the cabin like a physical blow. A collective gasp was audible over the aircraft's hum. The woman filming on TikTok made sure to get a tight zoom on Karen Baxter's face, immortalizing the sneer for a global audience. Leo's viewer count blew past 1,000. 1,200. 2,500. Someone with a major following had retweeted the link to his stream. The hashtag Torching Ascender Standards was born and began trending in Los Angeles. "Standards?" repeated the lawyer from 1C, his voice shaking with rage. "Are you even hearing yourselves speak right now?" Karen whipped her head around. "Sir, one more word from you, and you'll be joining her on the tarmac." It was the worst possible thing she could have said. Her threat ignited the simmering outrage into a full-blown fire. More passengers stood, their cell phones all pointed forward, a digital militia capturing every ugly second. "This is going viral," a man in the back of the cabin murmured. "Good," his seatmate replied. "The world needs to see this." The first security officer spoke into his radio. "Dispatch, we may need additional units at Gate 72. Situation is escalating." And that's when the cockpit door swung fully open. First Officer Marcus Thorne appeared, his face a portrait of confusion. "What is all this commotion? We're going to miss our departure window. Where is Captain Sharma?" The cabin fell utterly, completely silent. It was a silence so profound you could hear the frantic beating of hearts. Richard Fleming stepped forward, trying to project confidence. "Captain, we're just removing a disruptive passenger who was impersonating the flight crew." Marcus scanned the chaotic scene until his eyes found Anya, standing there with a calm that was almost supernatural. His expression shifted in a split second from confusion to disbelief to a deep, simmering anger. "That is Captain Sharma," he said, his pilot's voice, trained to cut through the roar of jet engines, now cutting through the silence with absolute, unimpeachable authority. "She's the pilot in command. We're scheduled to fly to JFK together. We've been flying this route for the last damn year." Heather's face went the color of ash. Karen Baxter's mouth opened, a faint, gurgling sound escaping before she snapped it shut. Richard took a physical step backward, as if he'd touched a live wire. But Karen, ever the corporate survivor, recovered first. Her training kicked in, and the immediate instinct was not apology, but blame-shifting. "Well," she huffed, desperately trying to regain control. "If she's really a pilot, why was she being so difficult? Why didn't she properly identify herself from the start instead of causing all this drama?" "Okay, pause right here. Let me know in the comments what you would have done in Anya's position. Because she could have ended it right there. She could have let Marcus vouch for her, accepted a groveling apology, and taken her seat in the cockpit. But that would have been too easy. That would have just been a victory for her. What Anya Sharma did next, it wasn't about winning a battle. It was about ending the war. If you're not already subscribed, you better do it now, because the tables are about to be flipped, burned, and rebuilt from scratch. Anya held up a hand to stop Marcus. She gave him a look that said, "Stand down. I've got this." Then she looked at Karen, at Richard, at Heather, and at the security officers. She even looked at Leo and his phone, giving a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. She understood the power of a witness. "You're right," she said, her voice soft but carrying to every corner of the cabin. "You're right to be concerned with security, with procedure. But you made a series of choices. You chose escalation over verification. You chose assumption over observation. You chose prejudice over professionalism." She paused, letting the words sink in. "And choices have consequences." She reached into her briefcase, her fingers bypassing her pilot's logbook and her flight plans. They closed around something else, something very few people at Ascend Air had ever seen. A black carbon fiber card, heavier than plastic, with the Ascend Air logo embossed in platinum. It was an Executive Fleet access card. Only 5 existed, but she left it where it was for a moment longer. These moments, these ugly, painful stories, they happen every single day to people who don't have a platinum card to play. They happen to people without power, without a platform, whose humiliation is never broadcast, never vindicated. "Officer," she said quietly to the guard nearest her, "before you escort me off this aircraft, I'd like to make a phone call." "Ma'am, you can make any calls you need to from the terminal." "No," Anya said, her voice taking on a new edge of command, an edge that made the hairs on everyone's arms stand up. "I think I'll make it right here." She pulled out her smartphone and dialed a number from her favorites. The phone rang once. "David," she said. "It's Anya. Initiate code Midnight Sun. Ground the fleet." There was a brief pause. "Yes, David. All of them. System-wide. Emergency board protocol. Execute now." The call lasted less than 30 seconds. Anya slipped the phone back into her jacket pocket and waited. For a moment, nothing happened. Karen Baxter allowed a small, triumphant smirk to cross her face. Richard shook his head in pity at this woman's delusion. Heather crossed her arms again, her confidence flooding back as if the call had just been a desperate, pathetic bluff. Then, hell began to cascade in slow motion. The departure board at the gate, visible through the plane's windows, flickered. Flight 815 status switched from boarding to delayed. Then it changed again. Cancelled. Then every single Ascend Air flight listed on the board, from JFK to SFO to Dallas, all flipped to the same ominous blood-red status. Grounded. The gate agent's computer began to chime with a high-priority alert. Her face went pale as she read the text scrolling across the screen. She grabbed her desk phone, dialed, and listened, her eyes wide with panic. She slammed it down and tried another number. "What the hell?" Richard Fleming muttered, fumbling for his radio. "Tower, this is Fleming at Gate 72. What's the status on Ascend operations?" The reply was immediate, the voice on the other end tinny and filled with stress. "All Ascend Air flights nationwide are grounded by executive order, effective immediately. We're trying to get a hold of corporate command, but all their lines are tied up. We don't know what's going on." Karen's smirk evaporated. "That's impossible," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Nobody has that authority except—" Her voice trailed off. Her face drained of all color as the horrifying, universe-altering realization crashed down on her like a tsunami. Leo's livestream was a spectacle of digital chaos. The viewer count blasted past 5,000, 6,000. Comments scrolled by too fast to read. Did she just ground the entire airline? Who is this woman? Holy soot, this is the ultimate boss move. Other passengers were now frantically checking their own phones, seeing the news alerts from Associated Press and Reuters that were just starting to break. A major U.S. airline had inexplicably ceased all operations. Anya reached back into her briefcase, and this time, she withdrew the carbon fiber card. She held it up, not flaunting it, but presenting it, rotating it slowly so the platinum logo caught the light. "My name," she said, her voice now amplified by the stunned silence, carrying with it a devastating calm, "is Anya Sharma. I am not just a pilot for Ascend Air." She let her gaze drift over Heather, then Richard, and finally settle on the ashen-faced Karen Baxter. "I am the majority shareholder and the chairwoman of the board. I own Ascend Air, and you," she said, her voice dropping to an icy whisper, "are standing in my conference room, and our meeting is just getting started." The silence that followed was a physical presence. It was heavier than gravity, pressing down on everyone in the cabin, sucking the air from their lungs. Heather Vance looked like she might faint, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a pier. Richard Fleming's radio slipped from his nerveless grasp and clattered onto the floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the tomb-like quiet. Karen Baxter grabbed the back of the nearest seat to keep herself from collapsing, her knuckles bone white against the blue upholstery. First Officer Marcus Thorne was the one who finally broke the spell, stepping forward to stand beside Anya, a loyal second-in-command. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice imbued with the gravity of the moment, "I can confirm that Captain Sharma is, indeed, the owner of this airline. I have had the privilege of flying with her for the better part of a year, while she has been conducting a top-to-bottom operational review." He turned his disappointed gaze on the cluster of disgraced employees. "She is, without question, the most skilled aviator I have ever shared a cockpit with." The businessman in 1C let out a short, sharp bark of a laugh, a sound not of humor but of sheer, unadulterated disbelief bordering on hysteria. You tried to kick the owner off her own plane," he said, shaking his head. "The actual goddamn owner." A woman somewhere behind him whispered loudly, "Oh my God, this is better than a movie." Leo's hands were visibly shaking as he tried to hold his phone steady. The live stream viewer count was now north of 10,000 and climbing exponentially. Someone at a major news network had obviously found the stream. The hashtag #ShotYourAscendair owner was now trending nationwide on Twitter, overtaking such Ascendair standards. But Anya wasn't finished. She was just getting warmed up. She turned her attention to Heather, whose earlier venom had been replaced by a terrified, tearful paralysis. "Heather," Anya said, her voice slicing through the thick atmosphere, "you said Ascendair has standards. You are 100% correct. We do." She retrieved a sleek tablet from her briefcase and swiped it on. A professionally designed slide deck, bearing the Ascendair corporate logo, appeared on the screen. It was the presentation she'd been preparing for the board meeting. "According to Federal Aviation Regulation Part 121, she began, reciting from memory, "as well as Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, airlines are legally and financially liable for discriminatory actions perpetrated by their employees. Recent case law in this sector suggests a potential liability of between $60 and $150 million for incidents that demonstrate systemic bias." Karen tried to speak, her voice cracking. "Ms. Sharma, please, I'm sure we can—" "I'm not finished," Anya cut her off, her tone leaving no room for argument. She swiped to the next slide, a detailed infographic filled with financial data. "Ascendair transports approximately 2.8 million passengers per month. Our quarterly gross revenue is $912 million. The numbers were staggering, far beyond the comprehension of anyone in the aisle. They were the closely guarded secrets of the C-suite, now laid bare in a first-class cabin. Our customer satisfaction index has dropped 8% over the last 2 quarters. Discrimination complaints, like the one you just manufactured, are up a staggering 41% year over year. And based on our crisis management analytics," she swiped again, showing a complex algorithm at work, "the live stream of this incident will likely cost this company upwards of $3 million in lost bookings in the next 48 hours alone." As if on cue, Richard's radio squawked to life again, the voice on the other end frantic. "All LAX units, we have confirmation from the Ascendair corporate tower. All operations have been suspended by order of the CEO and chairwoman, Anya Sharma. Repeat, CEO Sharma has issued a system-wide grounding." The official title, CEO Sharma, hung in the air, cementing the unbelievable reality. This wasn't just a rich investor. This was the person in charge of every single thing. Anya locked eyes with Heather. "You asked if I was going to post about this on social media. As it happens, Ascendair has one of the most robust social media monitoring systems in the industry, a system I personally oversaw the development of. We track every mention, every tag, every video." She gestured with her tablet toward Leo. "Your performance is currently being broadcast to over 10,000 people. Within the hour, this video will be on every major news network. Within 24 hours, it will likely have been seen by millions of people around the world, translated into a dozen languages. It will become a case study in what airline employees should never, ever do. Heather's face crumpled. The last vestiges of her defiance vanished, replaced by the raw terror of someone watching their entire life implode in real time. I didn't know, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. You didn't know my position, Anya corrected her calmly. But you knew I was a human being. You saw I was wearing the legitimate uniform of a captain. You were presented with proper federally issued credentials. You heard your own colleague on the PA system refer to Captain Sharma. Any one of those things should have been enough, but you chose to ignore them all. She then turned her piercing gaze on Karen Baxter. You, she said, her voice hardening, told me I didn't meet Ascend Air's standards. Tell me, Ms. Baxter, what are those standards exactly? Are they written down anywhere? Or are they just something you feel? Karen stammered, completely unable to form a coherent sentence. Her mouth moved, but only faint, squeaking sounds came out. Let me help you, Anya continued, swiping to a new slide showing the Ascend Air mission statement. Our official, board-approved mission statement includes the phrase, to provide safe, respectful, and dignified travel for every passenger and employee, without exception. Our employee handbook explicitly, in Section 4, subsection B, prohibits any and all discrimination based on race, gender, religion, or appearance. Both of those documents, she said, swiping to a final slide showing her own elegant signature, bear my name. Just then, 3 figures in impeccable business attire appeared at the aircraft door. The man in the lead was David Chen, the CFO, his face a mixture of concern and resolution. Behind him were the company's chief legal counsel and the head of human resources. The cavalry had arrived. Anya, David said, his voice calm. Are you all right? I'm fine, David, she replied. But our company is not. David's professional gaze swept over the scene. The terrified employees, the security guards, the passengers with their phones still raised. His expression turned to stone. I see. He turned to the woman behind him, the company's top lawyer. Eleanor, begin documenting. Get statements from every passenger in this cabin who is willing to give one. The lawyer nodded, her face grim. She had personally handled a multi-million-dollar settlement with another airline the year before for a far less public incident. She knew exactly what this was. Before they could begin, Anya held up her hand. One more thing. She checked her Patek Philippe watch. In approximately 90 minutes, I was scheduled to stand before our board of directors and present a proposal. She swiped the tablet to reveal a series of documents titled The Phoenix Initiative. It is a new, company-wide, zero-tolerance anti-discrimination protocol. It mandates a complete overhaul of our hiring and training practices. It establishes an anonymous, third-party system for reporting bias incidents. And it ties executive and managerial bonuses directly to diversity and inclusion metrics. The irony was so thick it was almost suffocating. The 3 employees had just made themselves into the living, breathing, viral justification for the very policy designed to prevent them. I was going to recommend a 6-month, phased rollout, Anya continued, her voice gaining a powerful momentum. However, today's events have made it clear that we do not have 6 months. David, she said, looking at her CFO, we are implementing the Phoenix Initiative in its entirety, effective immediately. Her phone buzzed again. David's phone buzzed. Eleanor's phone buzzed. It was CNN, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. The story of Ascend Air's grounding was now the lead item on every news ticker. So, Anya said, looking around the cabin, at the employees whose careers were hanging by a thread, and the passengers who had become witnesses to history. We have a choice. We can handle this through the usual corporate channels, terminations, lawsuits, PR nightmares, and a congressional hearing or two. A path that will cost this company hundreds of millions of dollars and irreparably damage our brand. She paused, then turned her full attention back to Heather, Karen, and Richard. Or, we can try something different. She swiped to the final slide of her presentation. It was blank except for 2 words. Option B. You three, she said, her voice losing its icy edge and taking on a tone of intense, focused purpose, have presented me with a unique opportunity. You have failed so spectacularly, so publicly, that you have become the perfect case study. Your apologies mean nothing to me. Your remorse is irrelevant. What I want is your participation. They stared at her, utterly bewildered. Option B is this. You will not be fired. Not yet. Instead, you are going to become the founding class of the Phoenix Initiative. Your new job, your only job, will be to work with my team to help build the most radical, comprehensive, and effective anti-bias training program this industry has ever seen. You will not just learn the policies, you will help write them. Your own words, your own actions, captured on video for the world to see, will be our primary training material. You will travel to every one of our hubs, and you will stand before our other employees, and you will tell your story. Your story of how a moment of profound ignorance and prejudice almost destroyed a multi-billion-dollar company. She looked directly into Heather's tear-filled eyes. Your new purpose is to make absolutely certain that what you did here today can never, ever happen at my airline again. It was a staggering proposal. Not just punishment, but a path to redemption. Not revenge, but radical, restorative justice. Anya then looked at Leo, who had finally lowered his phone, his face a mixture of shock and awe. And you, young man, you're hired. My office will be in touch. We're creating a new position for you, Director of Social Media Transparency. You're going to help us ensure we are always accountable to the public you just broadcast this to. She turned back to her crew and the gate staff. Now, she said, her voice resuming its captain's command. We have a flight to get to New York. David, get the planes back in the air. She nodded to Marcus, who gave a sharp, appreciative nod in return. And then she finally, blessedly, stepped across the threshold and onto the flight deck of her aircraft. The door closed behind her, leaving a silent, stunned cabin in its wake. The delay had been costly, humiliating, and infuriating. But as the engines of the A380 finally began to spool up, it was clear that the incident on Flight 815 hadn't just delayed a single flight. It had just changed the course of an entire industry. A year later, Anya stood at a podium addressing the National Aviation Summit. The audience was filled with executives from every major airline in the world. Behind her, a large screen displayed the Ascend Air logo over a picture of a rising phoenix. My worst day at this company became our greatest asset, she said, her voice clear and strong, because it taught us that a mistake doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of your purpose. She clicked a remote, and an image of Heather Vance appeared on the screen, not crying in an aisle, but confidently leading a workshop for new flight attendants. Heather is now the lead peer-to-peer trainer for our Phoenix Initiative. She has personally trained over 5,000 employees. Her story of personal accountability has been more effective than any corporate consultant we could have hired. Another click. Karen Baxter, at a computer, designing a new scheduling interface. Karen now oversees the implementation of our new AI-driven systems that monitor for and flag potential bias incidents in real time, allowing for intervention before a situation can escalate. Another click. Richard Fleming, shaking hands with a group of young, diverse pilot cadets. Richard now heads our community outreach, building partnerships to create a pilot pipeline for underrepresented communities. The final slide showed a graph. Ascend Air's discrimination complaints were down 95%. Customer loyalty, employee satisfaction, and stock price were at all-time highs. A dozen other airlines had since paid to license the Phoenix Initiative for their own staff. Power, Anya concluded, looking out at the rapt audience, isn't about proving people wrong. It's about giving them the tools and the chance to make things right. Now, I want to turn it back to you. Have you ever turned a moment of failure or humiliation into a catalyst for positive change in your own life? Share that story in the comments below. Let's fill this space with proof that our mistakes don't have to define us. What we do with them does. Thank you for being part of this. Subscribe for more real stories that matter. Share this if it moved you. And never, ever let anyone tell you that you don't have the look.